Tony D and Little John with a screenwriter's rant on The King Tide, a movie about a weird little kid that's delivered to this island village, and then, well, a lot of strange things happen. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy Heart in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 13, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. So, two fishermen, it's a really strange story. So, two fishermen are, I don't know, they're just hanging out on their island, and they hear a crying baby. And they go out into the water and they rescue a baby from like a ship that's overturned. And I believe her name is like Ilsa or something. So they don't know what to do with the baby, so they just decide to raise it, and it grows up to be this little girl, but she has strange powers. And it turns out, because she was brought to them at the King Tide, whatever that means, she is able to do things like she puts her hand in the water and all the fish come, and then the fishermen are able to catch them. And so the village thrives. But then a few years later, she's out playing with one of her friends, and the bees, she's, because she's all in nature, so the bees are like on her hand, but the bees attack her friend, and then she does something and it kills all the bees. And then her powers disappear, and now the village is worried. And they think about taking her to a doctor, but they can't do that because they just kind of found her. So they're worried about taking her to a doctor. And then the village starts to have problems. So without the little girl's powers, they start to have a rough time. At some point, a cop comes to the island. Now, the villagers have decided to never go to the mainland. That was one of their rules, since the little girl made them successful and thriving. But for some reason, the cops come, and then it threatens to unravel their whole secret with the little girl. And they start to turn on each other because now they don't have the magical little girl's powers, and I think one of the kids dies, and so they start to fight amongst each other. Here's a boy with a little gun, a little boy with a gun, and then this woman who kind of acts like a witch, and she like elevates the little girl to almost like a goddess type status. So it's almost like the sea delivered a little godling to the town. So it's creepy. And then I'm not sure what happens at the end. So I think it's kind of a neat little twist. Story by Ryan Grassling and Kevin Coughlin. Written by William Woods and Albert Shin, who's also one of the producers, William Woods, and directed by Christian Sparks. Don't recognize any of the actors. Yeah. But I was sort of waiting for the characters to have accents, but I think they're American. Or maybe Canadian. But it's not bad. Not a bad premise. Kind of interesting. So, first act is the fisherman recovering the baby. And during the recovery, one of the fishermen is cut. Like he cuts himself swimming under the boat or whatever. Not sure how that plays into it, but somehow that plays into it, I think. Some kind of blood offering, maybe. Something like that. Because I think there's a lot of pagan metaphor here. I think. So that's the first act. They save the baby, and then they discover the baby has powers. Maybe because the baby was in the water, or, and the villagers decide to raise the baby. They don't tell anybody. Maybe it has something to do with how the boat crashed, I'm not sure. but they also decide to not go onto the mainland. So then we cut to years later. The village is thriving. They're capturing a lot of fish because the little girl, I think it was Ilsa or some variation of that, Illa, something like that. And she's using her powers, and now the village is thriving. They're catching fish left and right. Somehow they don't have a connection to the mainland, which is odd. Not sure how they would make that work. That's a little odd, but I get it. It's probably for the conceit of the movie. I guess I can get past it. So everybody's happy until the day her powers, she uses her powers to kill the bees, and that kind of screws everything up because now her powers disappear. So now everybody in the village is worried, how are we going to catch fish? We don't have the little girl's powers now. Not sure what they were doing before. Maybe they were all preparing to leave the island, and all the fish had gone, and maybe now that the little girl doesn't have any powers, it's gone back to the way it was. The fish are all gone. So they're waiting for her powers to come back, and it's not happening. In the meantime, the police are sniffing around. People are talking about leaving the island, which they all agreed not to do. And so the tension grows and grows and grows until they start turning on each other. And then the cops come, and maybe they've figured out who the little girl really belongs to. And maybe the little girl is starting to ask questions. It's all starting to fall apart. What's the end? If I had to guess, it kind of ends a little bit like The Wicker Man, in that the pagan portion of it survives, right? The idea being like, oh, this pagan stuff is forever. You can't stop it. It's always been this way. It always will be this way. So somehow the adoptive parents take the fall. Maybe they die. And I don't know. The townspeople cover it up, and she gets her powers back because of a sacrifice of some kind during the events that heighten. Maybe the father sacrifices himself to save the little girl from the authorities, and because of that, maybe even the cop dies and they just blame it on the dead father, and then, she's able to stay on the island because they don't investigate any further, or they come up with some plausible excuse, and then it cuts to, the villagers, they're going back to their normal life, but they're continuing to idolize the little girl more and more, because it turns into almost like she's some sort of godling amongst them. So it's kind of creepy in a different way. I kind of dig the tone here, because I'm very intrigued of how this is going to work, how her powers work. Is she some sort of god? What are the powers exactly? Is she like a mutant, or is there something more going on here? Is this some sort of supernatural being? So I would totally see this. It's called The King Tide. Oh, here's a write-up. The mayor of an idyllic island village discovers a child with mysterious powers to awash on their shores. The once peaceful community devolves into civil war, torn over the belief that the child is the next savior. Oh, okay. So they think she's like Jesus. Well, that's interesting. There's kind of it's called a grim fairy tale. There's kind of a religious overtone to it. But I was sort of, it felt like more of a pagan vibe, because you have this old woman like pushing it. Because she keeps saying, I think it was Ilsa, or it was something like Ilsa, the name, but like all hail Ilsa, or Illa, or I forget now. I only watch these things once and then do the video. But it looks cool. It looks cool. It looks like my kind of movie. Yeah, it's got some intriguing things. So yeah, look for that. It's coming soon, I believe. and it's called The King Tide. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more bass takes. If you can find a more bass take, I say take it. I will be at Parker's Bend tomorrow for my talk on how to hunt the Jersey Devil. It's a retirement community, so you either have to be there or be family. So do that. Don't just show up. Saturday, I'll be at Nerd Force Fan Fest in Glassboro, New Jersey at the Marriott from 10 to 4. That's open to the public. Hope to see you there. We'll see you in the next one.